Okay, Everly, so the world has become a very dangerous and scary place. And there is a lot of fake news that we have to sort through. So I need to start teaching you as early as possible some important truths. Number one, RGB is awesome. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. RGB is great, and if people say your computer looks like a Christmas tree, well, Christmas trees are awesome too. Second off, lights make it go faster. And the more colorful the lights, the faster it is. That is an undeniable truth. If anybody tells you otherwise, it's fake news. All right, guys, today we are going to get to something that, quite frankly, is one of the huge reasons why I wanted to do reviewing in the first place. So I have a CPU cooler from a company called, my best guess is Aigo, but A-I-G-O. Now, if you're like me, you may have never heard of this company. You're like, Aigo? What? Who on earth are they? But they've got a CPU cooler here that looks awesome. And so I got the opportunity to review this, and I'm so happy I did, because here's the thing, guys. I'm always looking for the company that might not be a big name, but is doing something revolutionary in the market. Aigo, I believe, is doing something quite revolutionary with CPU coolers, and quite frankly, I haven't seen anybody else do it. So let's take a look at this guy and let's talk about how this cooler looks, how this cooler performs, general quality, whole 9 yards. But before we do that, just want to take a quick shout out. Don't forget, I have eWin now in my office. I have eWin at my station right here. And so this is a super, this particular Champion Series chair, very, very, very comfortable. Really good price too. So there's a promo code in the description below, PureOC. You can get an additional 15% off. Like I said, once again, I mean, I have, other than receiving review samples, this is not like a paid for sponsorship. This is just me saying, hey, I really like this chair, and would encourage you guys to look into them because I want you to get a good chair as well. All right, let's go ahead, see what this assembly process looks like for this cooler, and then we'll keep going from there. Okay, Aigo, let's see. What are you? What are you doing? Who are you? Kind of a weird little company that you've never heard of. I'm telling you what, guys, I'm already really impressed. So I'm gonna do a quick closer look. So this is the tower that they have. And would you look at that? I mean, there's like, you know, some RGB, some of the RGB controls here. But I mean, look at that top plate that they stuck on there. Just, oh my gosh, that's clean. And so we've got just a nice standard black tower. We've got direct heat pipe contact, which, you know, I don't know if that makes a huge difference or not, but I love how flat that base is. Now I think that will make a difference. And then we're gonna, this is gonna be a nifty looking thing. Now the only thing is we're gonna have more cables as a result, but that is just a beefy, cool looking tower right there. So I'm already somewhat impressed. And then let's take a look at this fan. So what's cool is that, you know, for simplicity of syncing to, you know, motherboard controls and stuff. Come on, camera. You can do it. There we go. It's got the RGB, an external RGB connection right there. So that's interesting. This fan is kind of beefy. And then look at that. We got these nice, get that little piece of white. And it's still there. Come on. No. Oh, man, that's a real sticky piece. There we go. Got rid of it. Feel better now. OCD, sorry. Anyway, got a really nice anti-vibration pad right there. They all stick out really good. So, I mean, this fan's not gonna make direct contact on anything really. This is a, So that's kind of just a quick little closer look that I wanted to do. Let's go ahead now. We'll look at the actual bracket closer look by doing the install. Okay guys, I got everything set up and ready to go. Let's start this install process. So the first thing we want to take note of is go ahead and remove AMD's included back mounting bracket because you're not going to need it. What you are going to need is the back mounting bracket that comes with the Aigo cooler. And so it's got 4 lawn bolts that, come on, wake up. There we go. 4 lawn bolts that go through this little foam pad in the back. And as you can see, there's the AM4 bracket holes. Because this is meant to, one bracket kind of does all. So yeah. Oh, let me just lean stretch. There we go. All right. So that's just going to go right through like that, sit into place. Then what you're going to have is you're going to have these little washers and then these longer kind of bolt things that you're going to screw on there at all 4 points. So yeah, you just stick one of the washers on there, helps protect the socket on your motherboard, and then you'll just have a nice little hefty, fairly long screw to get through. But you know, if you just kind of get it going, eventually you'll get all the way through. So I'll go ahead and put the rest of those in, and then we will pick up from there. Okay, so once you get those 4 mounts screwed in, one thing I want to point out about this is they use a foam pad on the actual bracket in the back. So you can kind of just spin these things for forever, but it feels like what happens is these things hit a point where they're just the whole bolt and nut there is spinning, and you're not going to tighten anymore. So my recommendation so far, and we'll see how this all turns out, but I wouldn't try to crank these down super hard. I just, you know, kind of turn them until they feel like they're just not really doing anything anymore and they feel kind of snug. And so far it looks like that's what I've got going on here. You know, I've got a little bit of, I can kind of still feel a little bit of play here and there, but everything looks like it's cinching in nicely. So I kind of want to just leave it at that. So once you get to that point, you've got this bracket here. Now the instructions, you can kind of choose whatever order, but I'm going to tell you what I recommend. So there are 4 pieces to these brackets, and you actually have to screw them together with these 2 little permanent screws. So I recommend most definitely that you go ahead and put the entire mounting bracket together first, and then once you do that, the holes there for AM4, you're going to just slide right over. And you're going to make sure there's, like, you can kind of see on this, there's a little bit of an outdent here, and then it's kind of a little bit of an indent here. You want that facing up. So we're going to go ahead and get all that in there and get this mounting bracket finished putting together, and then we will move on to that next step. All right, and one more thing. Make sure that the holes for, come on, wake up. Wake up, there you go. Make sure that the holes for where you're, wait a minute, is it really woke up? I don't know. I don't know if there it goes, finally. Make sure these little holes in the outdents, they're on the bottom side of these kind of supporting brackets. So you won't see, you can see the ends of the screws, you won't see the actual heads of the screws there. So it'll be, when we put it in there, it'll be like that with these pieces on the bottom. So once you get those 4 securing bolts, nuts in place, you're pretty well set. And now we can look at how we're going to get the cooler installed on that. Okay, so we're all prepped and ready. I got my thermal paste on there. So with your tower guy here, you're going to have this bracket. There's a little tiny notch that's just kind of right there in the middle, and it'll slide right into a little tiny notch that's right there. Holds into place pretty well. So we'll see how this goes. But now normally this would be way easier if you have your case, you know, on the back side, but if I do this very carefully, bam, just like that. Then I just need to, so this bracket has the sliding screw thing going on. So you kind of have to make sure your screws are pushed into the inside, which I'm just finding that out now. So it's making things just a hair bit more complicated. Also, I think I slid out of my thing. So yeah, I'll have to work on this a little bit better there. So let's see here. Make sure both of my screws are slid in like they need to be here. This other one's being a little bit sticky. Bam. So yeah, you might want to take the bracket, and I probably should have done that first, but you can see here, I'm not even totally lined up. So if I just push one of these screws out a tad and out a tad, make sure that these guys are lined up good first. That'll probably make this whole process a whole heck of a lot easier. Now I can move forward. And yeah, let's just do this the way that I think will make the most sense here. Most sense for me trying to do this on camera and doing it in a way that really doesn't make any sense at all. But you know, considering how little that made any kind of sense whatsoever, I'm pretty happy with it. I'm gonna go ahead now. Let me just go ahead and see what happens when we tighten this down, because I was a little bit, oh, I see, I didn't even make it into that bracket. Well, there's half my problem right there. Bam. So yeah, I'll tighten it down the rest of the way, but that's not too bad considering I was doing it vertically and, you know, on camera. So let's go ahead. I'm gonna tighten this baby down and then get the fan on there. Okay, so I was kind of amused by monster clip going on here. I was like, whoa, what is that? So I got it already just kind of balanced in there. Looks like the metal bar goes right into the bracket there. And then all you would need to do is kind of place your fan into place in front of the, you know, or behind it, wherever you prefer, or where we have room. And then all you gotta do is get that little hook thing to just pop right over the edge like that. Do the same thing on the other side. So yeah, that is, bam. That's not too bad at all. Not too bad at all. So you do the same thing on the bottom and your fan's clipped in. After this, let's go ahead and look at how we're gonna connect all that wiring. All right, so the inadvertent side effect of having this much RGB on a cooler is we're gonna have a lot of wiring. And I thought this was gonna be really confusing, and it was kind of at first until I remembered one simple little thing, which I will get to in a bit. And then I realized it wasn't so bad. So first off, you've got two wires coming off the fan. One is gonna be, come on, wake up. Wake up even more. There we go. One's gonna be for the RGB. The other one's just a straight, you know, PWM connector for the motherboard. So obviously you can do your PWM, plug it into your CPU slot, and so that way you got your fan going. Now, the cooler has a few wires. For one, it's got this little 3-pin guy. Now, this little 3-pin guy is integral for the power. You need to have that. So remember that little thing I told you I was gonna get to in a second? This is it. Make sure you plug this into a header that's going to be on full power. Okay, some motherboards have like a pump header, and that would be great to use for this because the way that pump headers usually work is they usually work at full speed. But if not, make sure you go into your BIOS and set whatever header, fan header, you plug that in into full. So that way you don't have to worry about it. Now, once you get that guy in there, you're gonna have up top here these two little connectors, and one's gonna have a tag that says RGB 12 volt. And really it doesn't make a whole lot of difference, you know, but the one that has a tag on it should match the one that comes from your fan. And the other thing about that though is, regardless of how it matches or not, there's a little slot in here so that it will only fit the one that goes for the fan. So now, that should be all you would need to plug in if you want to control it with the remote. I want to sync this thing to my motherboard. So then if you want to do that, they include this extra cable. And if you've noticed, this is hanging down, it's going all the way straight down to here. That is going to be a 4-pin connection for RGB control. Because this is an AMD system, well, this thing has a RGB header for the Wraith coolers. Now there is, let's see if I can get that to come in, that there's a little tiny arrow. That's the only indication you have. That arrow needs to match up with the pin that says 12 volt. And so if you do that, you're good as gold. I'm gonna see if I can get this baby back in there. Bam. Did I get back in there right? Wait, seriously? No, I think I missed a pin here. I thought it was like that good. And I still missed a pin. Yep. I'm only somewhat good. not that good. Alrighty, so yeah, once you have that plugged in, you plug this guy into the other wire that's coming off of the heatsink, and that's how you're gonna have it all connected. Let me redo this now so I can have cleaner wires, and then we'll see what this baby looks like. Okay, everybody, take a look at that. That is a CPU RGB cooler that is syncing with my entire motherboard setup, and that's pretty awesome. Too bad I have trouble getting the graphics cards to sync up with the colors. But yeah, so I don't understand this, guys. Why is nobody else doing this? I have RGB down the side, RGB here on the top, and an RGB fan, as well as having a stupidly professional looking black tower cooler. I love this. Yes, I do have some cables to manage, and that is a slight downside to this because, you know, it's kind of nice when you don't have as many cables, but I will gladly trade that because, as you can see, I bundled some things together, I tied things down, and everything is still pretty easy to keep nice and neat. And as far as people looking at your case is concerned, they're probably not going to see the wires. And if I put even a little more time and effort into this, I could probably hide the wires even better than what I did. But as it is, I'm pretty happy with the way it's looking like right there. If I had it to do over again, I would turn this fan so the wires are coming out the bottom, and then I would twisty tie all the wires into the bottom of the heatsink there, so that then I just have a little tiny bundle coming up the top, and I don't have such a big deal. Other nice thing about this cooler is this is RGB without any software control because everything is being controlled from a header pin. Done, done, and done. So I love the looks of this thing. This is fantastic. Let's look at some performance now and see if the performance will measure up as well. Okay, so we've made it through the assembly, we've made it through the appearance, and so far we have a pretty solid looking cooler in our hand. Now we need to see performance. Now, I don't have a ton of air tower comparisons I can make, so I decided I would just test against a very unfair challenge, which was my Kraken X62. So of course I'm still using Ryzen. I am a super huge fan of Ryzen. Oh my gosh, Ryzen just feels so great to use on a daily basis, installation, all that fun stuff. So I've got my 1800X that I've kept on my test bed here, and I did my temperature testing with that. Now my Kraken was able to average after my 20-minute run, well, 10-minute warm-up, 20-minute actual testing period. So I was averaging a 53.8 degree core temp on my 1800X, which isn't terrible. Like, it's pushing limits. And you know, 8 cores and 16 threads, that doesn't surprise me. Now the Aigo, it was pulling a 69.9 degrees. So one thing's for certain, this guy is not a super heavy cooler. In fact, those temperatures are pretty high. Now, it is a small data set on OCCT, which is going to push the temperatures the highest anyway. So while it will probably get you by on most of the coolers, on most of the 8-core processors, and you probably wouldn't have an issue, I would recommend still keeping the Aigo for either the 6-core processors or even like the 1700, which has got a 65-watt TDP versus the 95-watt of some of the other Ryzen processors. So this isn't going to be the heaviest duty cooler. I also feel like at 69, that's such a huge break that I think Aigo could do some work in looking into how to optimize their heat pipes better. I could feel heat coming off at the very base of the tower, but it didn't feel like the heat was traveling very well up through the entire unit, which tells me that the heat pipes are probably not working as good as they should. So those are some things that on a performance level I would like to see. I don't think Aigo is really taking any performance crowns, but it is performing. And one thing I was checking up on was, hey, does this cooler let my chip throttle or my test fail? And it didn't. It held up for the whole 30 minutes, which I've had problems with in the past with my Ryzen 1800X. So that's still a pass, and at least it's going to be better than a stock cooler. Now, noise levels, that's a whole nother deal. So my Kraken on a performance mode, which is allowing the software to kind of choose its own curve, ended up getting up to a full 47 decibels on my little app that I use. The Aigo cooler was only pulling 40 decibels, and that's an average over 30 seconds that I use holding my phone about 6 inches away. So it's very, very good for comparative results, even if they're not the most accurate in a strict 100% decibel accuracy rating. So yeah, 40 decibels, I mean, this thing is very quiet. You can barely hear it when it's on full speed, which is pretty fantastic. So they do really good jobs on the noise. So overall, I'm gonna say that we're not doing bad on the performance. I call it passable, but if you're looking for cooling performance, then you probably need to be looking at Noctua instead of this. If you're looking for aesthetics, I feel like there is enough performance there that if you're not too worried about, getting every little ounce of overclock out of your chip, then this guy's gonna work good. It's not gonna utterly fail you, which is one of the things I was concerned about. Alrighty, let's go ahead and wrap this review up. Alrighty, let's get right down to it. So if you're gonna pick up one of these guys on Amazon, especially with the particular seller that contacted me, it's $65.99. If you are looking for a cooler that is just cooling, then yes, definitely not worth the price. Because the simple fact is that if you're just wanting some good cooling, then Cooler Master has their Hyper 212 series, and anywhere from, sometimes I've seen those things as cheap as 20 bucks, and like their Evos are around 30. You cannot beat the price to performance of just raw cooling there. And so of course that's a no-brainer. You wouldn't get this cooler, but you're not gonna buy this cooler for cooling. And if you're concerned about cooling, you probably would wanna look at Noctua anyway. Now let's talk about if you want it to just look good. My personal experience, I have been through so many coolers trying to get that extra bit of performance so I can get that little bump of clock speeds, and then I go and I play Destiny 2 and find out, oh, it doesn't affect my frame rate in any noticeable way, and now I just want something that looks cool. So I want something that has good enough performance, which we've shown is, in the ballpark. Aigo is not so far behind that they're really going to cost you performance. But I want it to look great. I want something to match my system. RGB wise, this is where it all comes down to for me. Why is nobody else doing what Aigo is doing? Maybe there's somebody is, but I cannot find, and I would love to know, because if you find somebody who's doing something as extensive, you put it in the comments below because I'm interested. But here's what I found in my shopping endeavors. I found CPU coolers that give me an RGB fan, but then they leave me with just kind of a bare bones aluminum copper, the kind of brassy color, silver color look that just looks unfinished. Okay, well, that's not as nice as what Aigo's doing. I've seen coolers where they've got a nice black finished tower and RGB down the sides, and that looks really cool, but the fan is just a straight black, no color, no LEDs. Why? I mean, come on, one extra step. Just put that RGB on the fan. It's right there. Aigo, as best as I can tell, they are the only RGB cooler that has an RGB lit logo, RGB running down the sides of the tower, and an RGB fan, on top of being able to sync the whole thing to whatever motherboard scheme that has your typical 4-pin RGB headers on it. And because AMD has RGB in their Wraith coolers, it's really easy to do that. Why is Aigo, this company that I've never heard of, doing something that nobody else is doing? Yeah, I love it. I love how this thing looks. If I had to choose between performance, now you know me guys, I love RGB, but if I had to choose between cooling performance and this kind of aesthetic, I'm gonna go with this aesthetic. In fact, this is probably gonna sit on my chip for a while because I just love the way it looks. I love the fact that I've got a color cycle going on my motherboard and this cooler is, synced up with it. Now, the RGB lighting on the logo could be a little bit better. It's kind of washed out compared to some of my other ones, but overall, it looks great and I'm really happy with this. I don't know why anybody else isn't doing this. And for a company that I haven't heard of, there is a crazy amount of quality in the feel of this cooler. I expected this to be a lot cheaper and a lot more clunky and gimmicky. It felt solid. The fan even feels really good. I don't know who this Aigo company is, but I'm super interested in what they're doing and I want them to keep it up. So I'm going to give this cooler a very clear Editor's Choice Award because they're the only ones that are doing it. And I feel like other companies need to take notice of how to do RGB in a tower cooler. We could stand to have some better cooling, and I'm sure somebody could come up with something better. So even if it's Aigo themselves. So there you go, guys. I'm a huge fan of this cooler. If you want a cool looking cooler that's gonna at least keep your processor from burning up, then they're definitely worth checking out. If you guys are going for hardcore cooling performance, I totally understand if you're gonna look elsewhere. I'm really happy about this. I really appreciate it. Let me know what you think of the review, like and subscribe to my channel, and I will catch you later.